an hour. By all means, use the chat, but I'll be sharing screen throughout the session. I'll stop every once in a while and come back and answer some questions. I'll be online after the session. I'll hang around as long as you have questions. Send me an email afterwards if you get stuck as well. How does that sound? Okay, I'll keep this pretty relevant. What I want to do is pretty much discuss EndNote, the general principles. This is not a masterclass. I want to go through the process of downloading EndNote, building a library, exporting references into the EndNote library. Look, apologies for the jargon. We refer to the EndNote database, the bibliographic database, as a library, an EndNote library. We'll talk about managing the library, the database, building groups, saving the library, sharing the library. And lastly, we'll talk about EndNote as a referencing tool. But before we can reference with EndNote, we need to build the EndNote database. My preference of EndNote is this. Look, I use EndNote as a database to manage the bibliographic records that I use for my research. To be honest, I don't reference with EndNote these days. I manually reference, but you can reference with EndNote. EndNote plugs into Microsoft Word, and you could reference with EndNote. The reference types that we tend to use, APA, Vancouver, are pretty good with EndNote. Right, I will share my screen now. Okay. Well, actually, I've shut my email, so I'm not distracted by that. Right, share screen. Just a nod there. You should be able to see the Population Health and Global Health Guide here. Good. This is the guide that we use. Hopefully you've encountered this guide already. I always begin my sessions with this guide. Incidentally, there is a special literature searching sub-guide you could access that way. But what I want to look at is referencing. So on our guide, I haven't got any notes today because I rely on the online guide these days. So click on referencing, EndNote. This is put together by my colleagues in the library. We try to keep this up to date. All of the stuff that I'm covering today is included on this guide. Accessing EndNote, I will quickly mention this up front. I am using Windows. EndNote for Mac's slightly different. Most of the differences are cosmetic, but there are some technical differences as well. I will export some references from a database shortly. You can do all of this on Mac, but the processes are slightly different. So Mac users, please refer to the guide. I am not using EndNote Online today. We're using what is called conventional EndNote or EndNote Desktop, the traditional EndNote version. There is an online version. In theory, you should be able to sync the EndNote Online with the desktop version. To be honest, people, I gave up using online about 2 years ago. I now just use the regular EndNote Desktop. You can still move the EndNote Desktop version around. You can save it and email it. I had a problem. I lost about 6 months of data trying to sync my desktop library to my EndNote library, and I had a tantrum and I said, that's it, I'm never using EndNote Online again. That said though, a lot of people use it with EndNote Desktop without problems. But again, I'd advise you to refer to the guide before you create an EndNote Online account. So all of the information is here, the stuff that we're covering today. If you haven't downloaded the program yet, you can do that from this guide. Download EndNote. We have a Cite license at the University of Melbourne. That means you can download the software for free on your own computer, your own personal laptop. You can download the program and keep it. Download the program, creating a library. We'll go through this. We'll find full text, and we'll end up referencing with EndNote later. When I export references from a database, I'm using Windows. Again, Mac users, please refer to this. There's information here. The steps are slightly different, but you'll end up with the same results. Okay. So in real life, this is what's happening. I'm working on my research project. I've searched the literature. I will run a search on Scopus and Medline Ovid. I will export those results to my EndNote library, and I'll reference with EndNote. Most of the material that we use, I think these days, is still coming from journal articles. We wouldn't need, I hope, to do too much data manual entry. However, I will quickly demonstrate maybe referencing a web page. My experience these days is the only manual data entry that we need to do these days is to create a reference for a web page, because we usually can't export web pages from the databases. Look, let's work with Scopus. Can you see the Scopus page here okay? Great. I've just quickly run a search here. I've just typed in breastfeeding and low birth weight. Just a very quick search. I get some results. Might just display these by relevance just to get a good date range. Actually, no, I'll change that to highest cited. So look, in reality, I'm researching my project, running a literature search. All databases allow us to export references to EndNote. You have the option, if you haven't returned too many results, to export the entire batch to EndNote. If you're doing a systematic review or some kind of systematic search, we often do that once we've produced a good search strategy. Today, though, I just want to be selective. I just want to go through the results here on Scopus. So I'm looking for some papers for a project that I'm working on. Let's say all databases pretty much work like this. We select the papers that we're interested in. What a kangaroo topic's coming up here, that's strange. Now, the jargon is fairly consistent. Exporting. So we run a search on a database, we tag the results and we export. Scopus has just changed this recently. If I was to click on RAS export now, an RAS file would download. I could put that into my EndNote library. This just happened last week. There is now an arrow beside the RAS export with Scopus, and I always recommend Scopus for population and global health topics because it's a good comprehensive database. It's searching across discipline areas, not just health and medicine. So a lot of us use it. I want to export these results to my EndNote library. Beside RAS export, Scopus have just put this arrow. This is important. RAS export, click on the little arrow beside that. EndNote is one of several bibliographic management products available these days. Some of us have heard of Mendeley and other products. RAS format is used for EndNote. The databases will typically not give you the abstract as a default option. So when I am working with EndNote, especially if I'm working on some kind of review, I always want the abstract. So just keep that in mind if you're exporting from a database. The citation only won't give you the abstract, because typically with any kind of review, we review based on title and abstract, and I like to have the abstract in my EndNote library. So be sure to grab the abstract as well. Now, Windows, Chrome, this should be a pretty straightforward process of direct export. Browsers work differently with Mac users, so consult the guide. Chrome and Firefox usually work pretty well from memory with databases and EndNote with Mac. I will click on export now. This should download an RAS file. You might see it at the bottom of my page here. Export. An RAS file is downloading. When I click on that now, it should direct export the references straight into my EndNote library. Mac users, you might need to find your library. The process will be slightly different. When I click on that now, it will open my EndNote library and put the references straight in there. I'll have to share the screen again here. I'll have to do new share. Here I am in my EndNote library. I'll do that again. The latest references, if you're using an EndNote library that is not a new one, will always go to what's called an imported references folder there. They're the latest references, the 17 from that search. All references, the 17 are now consolidated with my library. I've already created a library here. If you create a library from scratch, it will be empty. You won't have groups. I'll explain this shortly. These are the references. I'll do this again. Double click. EndNote will import all of this citation data straight into your EndNote library. No data manual entry required. Look, that's how it displays the authors. The bibliographic data is usually pretty good if you're using Scopus. The name of the journal, the article, the pagination, and importantly, there's the abstract as well. File, close reference. Double click to open. File, close reference. Reference types. Most of the content on the database are journal articles. If there was a book chapter or an edited book or another bibliographic type, it will say so there. Now, I'm going to do that again, but from Ovid Medline. Here I am on Ovid Medline. I've run a search already. Already this is familiar. Look, we already have the all option, just like we had on Scopus, but this is a separate database, a different one, Medline Ovid now. We can select all to put the whole lot in. Or as we did on Scopus, we can go through the results and manually select those that we want. When you have selected the papers that you want to export with an Ovid database, such as Medline Ovid, look, export. It looks different, but it's the same process. Ovid databases allow us to export to a lot of different formats. So what we do, just to demonstrate how it looks between different databases, we always select EndNote from the options available. Now, again, this is important. Like most databases, Ovid defaults to citation only. I want the abstract as well. So be sure to include the abstract. We run the search. We select the results that we want, export, EndNote, and I like to get the abstract. When I click on export now, exactly the same thing will happen. An RAS data file will download. There it is. When I click on that data file, it should, I hope, direct export straight to EndNote. I'll do that again. Click there. I'll need to do a new share. Oops. You can see my EndNote library. Good. They're the 9 references that I just downloaded from Ovid. There they are consolidated. Now, my preference is to work from the database to EndNote. The most important thing is to create a good search strategy for your topic. That's the hard bit and the most important bit. I prefer to build a search on Medline or Scopus or Web of Science and then export the results to my EndNote library. EndNote has the option to do database searching from within EndNote. They're called connection files. There is a connection file for PubMed and the University of Melbourne Library. To be honest, people, I haven't really used connection files now for about a year or so. I used to use the PubMed one occasionally. The connection files are convenient for quick searching, but you cannot construct a sophisticated search strategy using the connect file. If we need to present a search strategy for a review or an assessment task, we need to do that at the database. I find the connection files difficult to maintain and manage, and I always run the risk of accidentally importing references into my EndNote library that I don't want, but they are there. So when you open EndNote, you'll see these things called connect files, connection files. There's information on the guide about them. My recommendation is to build a good search on a database and then export into EndNote from the database. Okay. Let's see if there are any questions. Questions, comments so far about what we've covered? We've run a search, we've tagged the results, we've exported into the EndNote library. What I want to do now is go back. Oh, sorry, there was a question. I missed that one. Sorry, I'll quickly go back. Stop share. How are we going here? Right, Scopus is on the library guide that I showed us to begin with, the Population and Global Health Guide. I'll show us how to find that later. The databases, the key databases are listed on the Population and Global Health Guide databases, Medline, Sinal, PsycInfo, Scopus, Web of Science. They're all listed there. Okay. Now, my recommendation is to have one EndNote library, especially for your regular coursework. If you're working on a formal systematic review, yeah, there are merits to have a special EndNote library for that review. But I would usually recommend having one EndNote library. I've just created some groups here. Think of groups as sub-libraries. You want to create a group. It's totally up to you what you call the group or how you create the group. I want to create a group for my literature review, let's say. Groups are sub-libraries. Let's create another one. Group for an assessment task that's coming up. Create a group. Let's call it Assessment 1. The references are here in the EndNote library. You can hold the Control key down if you're using Windows. I think it's the Command key with Mac, and drag those references into that group. Groups are fantastic. Think of the group again as sub-libraries. I tend to arrange them thematically if I'm working on a topic. You can put the reference into as many groups as you want. It's totally up to you how you create the group. This Schumann paper could go into group A. I can also put this into group B as well. I suppose what I'm trying to say is for your EndNote library, try to avoid the temptation of having multiple libraries, and go for groups. Groups as sub-libraries within the EndNote library. They're fantastic. I think you can create up to 500 groups or something like that. Look, we're working on a manuscript, let's say, a paper we're working on. Let's go through our library here. We'll grab some references, hold the Control key down. Yeah. Let's put them in there. These are the 9 references that I've just actually downloaded from Medline Ovid. I'm going to create a Medline group. So let's just put all of those recent downloads into the Medline group. When you go back to all references, they're still all there. Now, before we talk about full text, one of the potential hazards of searching multiple databases for a topic. So we're searching Scopus, we're searching Medline, we're searching Web of Science or Google Scholar. We can often download the reference from several different databases. So we could end up with duplicate records in our EndNote library. A paper is typically indexed on Scopus as well as Web of Science and maybe Sonal as well. Try to just have one reference per paper in your EndNote library. So if you're searching multiple databases, references, find duplicates. What I want to do now is search my EndNote library for duplicate records, because that search that I did on breastfeeding and birth weight on Scopus, I ran exactly the same search on Medline and I could have accidentally downloaded the same paper twice. I want to remove the duplicate. No duplicate records found, which is a good sign. If it did find duplicate records, a message will come up saying duplicates, keep, discard. So you keep the selected reference. That will automatically move the discarded or the unselected reference into the garbage or the trash bin. Just keep that in mind if you're searching databases, several databases. Try to keep the library free of duplicate records, and the find duplicates is a pretty good way to do that. Now, EndNote is not just a database for citation data for the reference. We can also build an archive of full text papers. This paperclip icon indicates that there is a PDF for this paper. Now I'll explain how to get the full text shortly. So when you click on that reference, look at that. PDF is in the file attachment field. With EndNote, Mac users, you do have this. It looks slightly different. But what I want to do now, it's a funny icon up here, find full text. It's an Adobe symbol inside a magnifying glass. I've highlighted these papers. I want to find the full text for these papers. Find full text. What will happen now if it works is I'll be prompted to enter my username and password. Because now EndNote is searching the University of Melbourne libraries eJournal collections, it's searching automatically for the PDF. That's why I've typed in my username and password. If it finds the PDF, the paperclip symbol will appear to indicate the PDF has been found. Now, this works, I reckon, about 50% of the time. It totally depends on the search. When it finds a full text, that's convenient. The paperclip appears. If it doesn't find the full text automatically, don't assume we don't have the paper. We probably do have the paper. It's just that EndNote was not able to find it automatically. So if it doesn't find the full text automatically, and I'm not having too much luck here actually, a paperclip will appear to indicate it has located the PDF automatically. If it doesn't do that automatically, then you'll have to go back to the database, manually download the PDF, and then manually attach the PDF to the EndNote record. Look, again, I can't explain why it works sometimes and other times it doesn't work. There was some technical issues recently regarding this function. There should be some instructions or update on the library guide. I'll quickly try this again. When it works, it's fantastic. But like I said, if it doesn't work automatically, then you might have to go back and manually download the PDF. I'll quickly try this again. But when the PDF is found, a paperclip icon will appear as it has done there. The point is this, EndNote is not just a database for bibliographic data. While you're here, you can build and archive your own collection of PDF papers and attach the PDF, and it's yours to keep. I'm not having much luck today. I don't know why that, maybe there's a technical problem. It was working well last week.
Yeah, Jim, when I was using it across the weekend and earlier this week, I was getting no matching. So that was something I wanted to ask today. So
yeah, look, I'm
not sure. Previously, I've had it work, but
yeah,
I thought it was
I'll
user
go back
error.
to the guide. Maybe someone's updated the guide. We've opened it. I don't want to be too boring of technical stuff, but we've rolled out a system called Open Athens, which is meant to make accessing the resources easier. Open Athens, I think, has affected our ability to automatically retrieve the full text through EndNote. It wasn't working, and then last week it was working, and now it looks like it's not working again. So we'll go back and look at the guide later. There's probably a technical reason why that's not working. But the papers that I've downloaded here, I did this all automatically last week or the week before last. So, okay, so it's not working now for some technical reason. Download the reference. You can then manually attach the PDF. The process is slower, but you can do it. File attachment, attach file. So what I've done here, oh, my messy desktop. I will try to find, let's say I've downloaded manually this paper. You will then need to manually download, and there it is there. So what you do is you download the PDF, and now it's just like attaching a document to an email. File attachment. Back into my really messy desktop. Let's find another. There's a PDF. Just click off to prompt the attachment. The point is this. You can attach the PDF as well. And look, with that automatic function, hopefully that's resolved. It's not perfect, but it's better than manually attaching, references. Adobe, I think it's pretty much just Adobe Writer. So when you do have the PDF there, you can start to highlight and take reference, take notes. It's perfect. It's really good. But like I said, just be careful. That PDF will sit in the file attachments.
Jim, can I just ask a question about
Please.
downloading files? Often they come down with their beautiful names, and sometimes they come down called Content Server 10.
Yeah.
Do you, as a discipline, then change Content Server 10 to the correct title of the article when you put it into EndNote? Are you fussy about those sorts of things?
I'm fussy about these things, but that's just because I'm a fussy person when it comes to labeling. Yeah, with my PDFs, ideally, I like to put the author's name and the year. But look, EndNote doesn't really care with the file naming conventions. It's just looking for a PDF extension. But I'm actually I remain a real technophobe and skeptic. I have the PDFs on my EndNote library. I still maintain a separate archive of PDFs, which I store separately, and they're nicely arranged by author, surname, and year. In addition to my EndNote library, I still like to keep my PDFs separately in files. But look, with your PDFs, if you've dedicated a lot of time to finding them, then yeah, keep them safe. EndNote is pretty secure as a database. Sorry, Mike. Thank you.
I also had a question in terms of downloading the RIS file. Once you've exported the data onto EndNote, are you able to delete the original RIS file?
Yeah, they're in your downloads. Just go back through your downloads and just delete the old downloads.
Okay.
Okay. They'll just sit in the downloads. That's where they are.
Yep.
Look, with sharing the library very quickly, look, most of us are using a laptop. That's good. Again, I'm working from home now, but what usually happens with my work situation is I've got my PC at work and my Mac here at home, my work computer set up now because I'm working from home. I would say, for example, work on my EndNote library at the university. I would then compress that library and put it on my home computer to work on the library at night time or on the weekend. If you are moving libraries between computers, or if you want to share your library with somebody, the best way to do that if you're using EndNote Desktop is to go File and compress that library, zip it up. That will create a .enlx that will compress the library. For example, if I wanted to save this library, put it on a USB and work on it from another computer, compress .enlx, I am prompted to save with file attachments. This will include your PDFs as well as your groups. If you just save the library, you will just save the bit that you're looking at, this bit here. What will happen now is I'll be prompted to put in a USB, for example, or save the library to a desktop and email it. The point is this, compress the library if you intend to move it between computers or save it to an external source. When you compress the library .enlx, that will zip it up. There'll be a compressed file, and when you click on that compressed file, the data file, which contains the full text, as well as the groups and the library, that will open up and overwrite an earlier version of the library. It's just like any digital document. The older version will be automatically overwritten by the more recent version if I'm moving the library between computers. So if I was to save this library now, put it on a USB, make some changes, stick it back into this computer, it will automatically overwrite the earlier version. That's probably not going to affect most of us who are just working on one laptop, but I say this just in case you wanted to create an external backup, which I do, or if you're moving between computers. The point is this, if you want to save the library, the EndNote library, compress it .enlx, because that will give you the file attachments and the groups. That's important. If you just save the library, you'll just get this bit here without the attachments. Okay. Any questions, comments before we continue? How are we going? There's some questions here. Look, and the benefit, I suppose, of attaching the file to the EndNote record is that you're not just EndNote is no longer than just a database of bibliographic data. EndNote then becomes an archive of papers. You have the document itself, if it's a journal article, as well as with EndNote. Look, it's not just it's not just PDFs that you can attach. Option, there is a research notes field. Sorry, my internet was just playing up. There is a research notes field here. But you can also attach a Word document. If you've taken lots of notes about a particular paper, you can attach that as well. I know, you know, archivists and historians, they've taken photographs of buildings or maps or whatever. They can also attach that to the EndNote reference. Look, manually creating references, like I said, exporting journal articles is nice and easy. You might need to manually create a reference through a web page. New reference. Web page. The default reference type is journal article. Let's say we want to manually reference a web page. You'll need to do that manually. What I usually do oops. The only references that I manually create these days for web pages. World Health Organization is the author. The document is just called Australia. If you are manually entering a reference on EndNote, don't feel you have to fill in all of these fields. Don't feel you have to fill them all in, just those that are relevant. Think about the document. The publisher is the WHO. The URL is important because it's a web page. Now, very quickly, the author, World Health Organization. Most of the web pages that we reference for our tasks these days are published by corporate authors. The World Health Organization is a corporate author. The University of Melbourne is a corporate author. The World Trade Organization is a corporate author. Now, I hope you can see this. There's my web page. Now, corporate authors, especially for web pages, EndNote is a stupid old-fashioned program. It will try to treat an author, a corporate author, as a personal author. So keep this in mind if you are referencing a web document, grade literature from a corporate author. EndNote will try to personalize the author, organization, initial WH, so it thinks the author's surname is organization and William Henry are the initials. Do this, and this will prevent you from going crazy with your bibliography. Go into the EndNote record, place 1 comma after the corporate author. And this is not intuitive. It has now given us World Health Organization in full. Like I said, most of the manual data entry we need to do these days is for web pages or grade literature. If it's by an author, a corporate author, just remember to put 1 comma after the corporate author, so EndNote doesn't personalize the author's name. Again, that will drive you crazy when you're trying to reference, which we'll look at shortly. Again, with web pages, just put the stuff that's important. You know, the URL is important, the publisher is important, the place of publication, the year, everything that you can get from the web page, copy and paste it into EndNote. Don't feel you have to fill in everything. There is a date accessed somewhere here. That's important as well. I can do that later. So like I said, the only manual data entry I tend to do these days are maybe book chapters and grey literature reports that I found on the web or web pages. Everything else I usually just rely on the databases. Okay, I don't want us to run out of time. So what I want to quickly do now, we've built a database here. We've got full text, groups. When you've built a library, you are ready to reference. When you install the EndNote program, open a Microsoft Word document. When you install EndNote, it will download a new toolbar. And that's it. This plugs into EndNote. You need the toolbar in Microsoft Word to communicate with EndNote. Mac users, look, you've got a toolbar. It looks slightly different, but you can do all of this stuff with the Mac EndNote toolbar as well with Mac for Word. If the toolbar doesn't appear, we'll talk about that later. How are we going for questions? How do you then cite a web page within the text? Yeah, I'll show us how to cite the web page shortly. We'll do the referencing now. If there's a web page that you intend to cite frequently, or you want to keep a reference in your library, just create a reference for it. Like I said, I use EndNote as a database. I don't tend to reference with it, but we'll discuss referencing now. 95% of the technical problems that arise with EndNote are EndNote Word interface problems. EndNote's pretty stable. EndNote is not a Microsoft product. It plugs into Microsoft. So it's that interface that creates most of the frustration. So here's my manuscript. Here is the EndNote toolbar. It's totally up to you how you do this. I prefer to write and then manually insert the references later, and I'll show you how I mean by manually referencing now. It's a slower process, but a more careful process, but it's easier than having to write them in yourself. What I prefer to do is write, have my improvised referencing style. When I'm happy with the manuscript, I do this. I go to my EndNote library, and there's a shortcut. I highlight, I'll have to share screen. I highlight the reference that I want to insert in my manuscript. Within the EndNote library, there is a shortcut back to Word, Alt-1. Highlight the reference. Move that bar if I can. I'll have to new share here. Place your cursor. Insert selected citation. There's a magnifying glass in the Word doc. Insert selected citation. Before I do that though, I have selected Vancouver style, which is used in medicine, but look, APA, let's look at APA 6. Let's change that to APA 6. Insert selected citation. There's my first reference in APA style, which is an in-text style. The bibliography, here. Now let's quickly do that again. I write very slowly, and when I'm ready to reference, I do this last. I place my cursor where I want the references to go. Go to EndNote. Highlight the reference, or if you intend to insert 2 references in, you can highlight 2. Go to the manuscript, insert selected citations. The bibliography is generated in APA style, first author, alphabetically. I'll quickly just add some more references and I'll discuss this, because this is important. I'll just quickly go to my EndNote library and just quickly insert some references. Insert selected citation. There it is. Let's put some here. Go to EndNote. Insert selected citations. Quickly do that once more. Let's go to EndNote, and I'll share this with you again. Let's find this winter paper here. Hey, there's our World Health Organization report. Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's put the World Health Organization here. Here's the bibliography, and look, there's World Health Organization. We'll look at this later. Now, when I click on this bibliography, notice it's grey. This is what's called formatted text. Now, what I would recommend is this. This is a small document of just a few hundred words. This process of inserting references is working nice and easily. No technical problems. It's nice and quick. As a document reaches about 3,000 words, this process will slow down a lot. This is formatted text, it's grey. I would always recommend, when we are drafting a document, to work unformatted. I just clicked on convert to unformatted. The bibliography has gone. The reference is now in squiggly brackets. We can restore the formatting by just clicking on Update Citations and Bibliography. That will restore the formatting. After, like I said, a few thousand words, this process will slow down a lot. So work unformatted. Another reason why I work unformatted is this. If you intend to edit your work, for example, I think that sentence sits better as a concluding sentence. I've decided that this Zung paper is actually not that good. I want to delete that because there's a, this TN paper is better, let's say. This sort of editing creates all sorts of technical problems if you are working with formatted text. EndNote hates it when you start playing around with this formatted text. This is where all sorts of technical problems start to sneak in. EndNote even hates it when you sort of manually try to delete a reference formatted. That's why I would always recommend, while you are drafting, to work unformatted. And how do I do that? Convert to unformatted citations. And then we continue our drafting. You know, again, this paragraph here, this is a better lead sentence, let's say. It actually belongs better here. This sort of editing is best done unformatted, and we click on Update Citations and Bibliography to restore the formatting. Like I said, most of the technical problems that occur are EndNote Word issues. So don't overcomplicate it. A small document, that's nice. We can insert formatted references straight into the document. That's good. But I would usually recommend in real life when we're working with a large document to do this unformatted.
And Jim, we're able to insert unformatted citations.
You can.
Via that same process.
Absolutely. Let's do that now.
Update? Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. Let's convert unformatted now. We're still drafting this document. Unformatted, see the squiggly brackets? Let's place an unformatted reference after this semicolon here. Go to EndNote, and I'll just choose one, the Z paper. Insert citation. There it is, unformatted. To restore the formatting, update citations and bibliography. Update citations and bibliography. Mac users, it's there, it's just over here, it's somewhere else in your toolbar, but you can do this. It could be hidden away in tools or something with Mac users, but all of this is available. When I go update citations and bibliography, see, this is nice and quick, but if it's a long document with hundreds of references, this could take even half hour. You know, like you've got a PhD thesis of 80,000 words with hundreds of references. The process of updating from unformatted to formatted, you know, you could actually literally take half hour to do that as it just works through the document, changing the unformatted to formatted references. And like
Jim,
I said, please, yep.
For the bibliography, is it possible to number the references? Because sometimes you have a limit on, well, the assignment requires that you need to show the number of references you used.
One of the benefits of using EndNote is this. Let's change to a numbered style. See the style pull-down menu? Vancouver is a numbered style. We've now changed from the in-text APA style to the Vancouver numbered style.
Okay.
Now, follow your style guide. I will quickly say this, and this is actually an important and annoying point. There is ambiguity and confusion about Harvard style. EndNote Harvard style is completely different to the Australian Harvard style. So you don't want to be marked down by following the Harvard, your instructions to use Harvard style. The EndNote Harvard style capitalizes the authors, and it's completely different to the Australian style. What we call Harvard in Australia is an EndNote author date style. There's information on the library guide about that. My preference would be to use APA or Vancouver, to be honest. Look, with APA, I'm afraid that's just one of the pitfalls of the style, is that it does chew up a lot of word count. EndNote, though, will try to at least insert the ibid, or et al rather, I should say, in this case where the authors are multiple authors, the Gupta paper here. I think after about 7 authors, EndNote will automatically insert et al, so that will reduce a lot of the author names. I think it's the programming code after, I think, 5 or 6 authors with APA style, EndNote will automatically insert et al, which means, you know, all of the authors are listed in the bibliography but not in the reference. So that's one way it will reduce the word count. But if you have the option to use a numbered style, a nice numbered style like Vancouver, then use it. Vancouver's mostly used in medicine, but we still do see it in population health and global health. But just be careful with the Harvard style, because the EndNote Harvard is quite different to the Harvard in your course outline. Now, yeah, so that's easy to do. Look, EndNote comes with thousands of output styles. You can select another style. There are literally thousands. There's almost 7,000 styles these days, and most of these relate to journal articles. So if you're publishing a manuscript in a particular journal, you might want to go select another style, and that journal might have its own EndNote output style. But the more common styles are just listed here, APA or Vancouver. Edit, unformatted, restore the formatting by clicking update citations and bibliography. The very last thing that I do when I submit a piece of paper or a manuscript, the very last thing I do is convert to plain text. That will create an exact copy stripped of EndNote coding. I'm using the University OneDrive now, so it's problematic with the University OneDrive, but on your own computer, what will actually happen if you were to click convert to plain text, the very last thing you do when you're about to submit a paper, so you don't have to include this coding. When you select convert to plain text on your own computer, you'll have the option to create, basically you'll create 2 Word files. You'll name the master copy, save that as, you know, Word master or whatever. It will create an exact copy, a plain text copy, and strip all of the EndNote coding from that. So it'll just be a Word document. It will match exactly the master copy. And usually we just submit the plain text version. We'll strip it of EndNote coding. I'll quickly do that now. Again, I'm using a University of Melbourne machine here, so it's a little bit annoying because I have OneDrive, which sort of prevents this from happening. But on your own computer, when you go convert to plain text, when you continue, you save that document. What we have now is a plain text version, totally stripped of EndNote coding. And if you want to make any last minute superficial changes, you do it to this plain text copy. So let's say, I don't know, I wanted to italicize this or whatever, I can do that. This is now just a regular Word document, plain text. I'm using OneDrive here, University Computer. So what I should have done is save the master copy and file that away. But it's up to you. At the very end, what I prefer to do is, you know, just create a plain text copy and submit that, which I think is easy. But just keep in mind any changes that you make to the plain text, you'll need to go back to the master copy and incorporate them. If, for example, you submit this paper to a journal and they say, yes, we want to accept the paper with minor changes, you'd have to incorporate the changes that are recommended into the master copy and then resubmit change, and then plain text that, then resubmit that. I say that because a lot of submission systems and even Turnitin used to have problems with coded text. And track changes also has big problems with EndNote coded text. Having track changes with the formatted text is annoying. So if you intend to give a copy of a manuscript to your supervisor, I would recommend plain text that and give it to them, so then they can, make changes, and then you could incorporate their suggestions into your master copy later on. So look, that's all I really wanted to cover in the hour. Sorry, my eyes are shocking. Look, Smart Group, I haven't used Smart Groups for ages. Basically, you can just create a Smart Group where you can set up some words or some parameters, and you can run an import, and the documents will go into the Smart Groups automatically. I don't think I've built a Smart Group for ages. There's instructions in the guide. I, again, don't find them too smart. I prefer to control the groups, to curate my own groups. So I create a group and then put the papers in there manually. Look, my preference is to, the way I work is to add citations at the end, to be honest, Anne. I find toggling between both applications pretty disruptive. It depends on your writing style. I'm a slow and careful writer, and I like to just concentrate on the writing to get the writing down. I have an improvised reference style as I'm working. My preference is at the very end of the document, then insert the references, usually unformatted. Then I update the formatting. I can't just toggle between Word and EndNote. It just does my head in. But some people do it. Again, totally up to your preference and the way you write and work, and the length of the document, I suppose. But look, again, my main recommendation is with Word, just keep it simple, work unformatted, be careful with the editing. APA style, Vancouver style are pretty good with EndNote. We don't have to do the old-fashioned manual footnoting like some humanities disciplines have to do, so we don't need to worry about that. That becomes really clunky and annoying. But APA and Vancouver work nicely, I think, with EndNote. So we're lucky in that respect. But look, like I said, my preference is to use EndNote as a database. I manually reference. The reader of the document doesn't even know if you've used EndNote or not. They just want to see that the references are consistent and they conform to the style guide of the system that you're using. But if EndNote works well for you as a referencing tool, by all means use it. But like I said, most of the technical issues arise with EndNote Word interface. Usually when people try to, again, change the formatted text or modify the formatted text, could create a plain text version and play around with the editing as a plain text document. Yeah. Look, with the guide, I'll quickly go back and share. The databases, this is the Population and Global Health Guide. The easiest way to find that, it's on most of the LMS pages. It's certainly on the capstone. If you're doing the research capstone, it's on the capstone LMS. But the easiest way to find that, I suppose, is the library homepage, library guides. Oh, this is slow. Guides by subject, medicine, dentistry, and health sciences, population health and global health. The databases, Scopus is there, databases, down there. Referencing, EndNote. Yeah, look, with the find full text, someone has updated this. Look, okay, currently not fully functional, so there's some other technical problem, which is annoying. Hopefully that's resolved. Again, Mac users, lots of stuff here. Okay.
Jim,
I'll
is
stick,
I'm
please.
sorry.
Yep.
I was just
No,
going
you're
to
on
ask,
now. Yep.
in terms of that error message or that note just saying that there's some tech issues, you mentioned earlier that sometimes things get resolved within a week. Is it worth just keeping an eye on that? Because I'm just kind of weighing up the time in which it would take to manually link versus waiting to see if the link would happen.
How many papers do you need to save, Hannah?
I don't know the total amount at the moment, but it would be somewhere between probably 20 to 30 on.
Look, I'll probably just start manually downloading them.
Okay, thank you.
Look, it's really annoying. It's called Open Athens, and you
Mm.
know, we just rolled this out about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. There was a problem. We
Noticed
fixed
that
it,
too.
and it looks like the problem's returned. So
Okay.
that's something for the uni IT people to try to fix. But it's affected the find full text function with EndNote.
No worries.
Yeah, look, it is annoying, but I find it only works 50-60% of the time anyway. So usually I'm still manually downloading PDFs, but it certainly is better than, you know, having to download the whole lot. Yeah, which is annoying. Yeah, look, that's it. That's my trip through EndNote. Be in touch if you have any questions. Refer to the guide, and just don't overcomplicate the referencing. Like I said, most problems are EndNote word problems. EndNote itself is a pretty stable database, I found. Okay.
All right.
Take care. And Adriana, thank you very much for organising this again.
No worries. Thank you so much for, like, you know, I feel like I learned a lot. Like, this is probably like my third EndNote session with you, and I think I've learned something new today as well.